What's up, everybody? So we're back out in the shop with another Shop Talk Tuesday, and in this episode we were working on the Kukri. Now, I've already got some work done to it, so I'm not going to show it to you just yet, but we're going to actually get into that. We're going to do a few things in this episode, like drill a hole in the blade, which is kind of a pain in the butt with my drill because it's not a very powerful drill press. It's like one of the least expensive ones from Harbor Freight that you can get, but we were able to make it happen. Now, go ahead, drill that hole, and start working on those scales in the spine. In this episode, we're really using the machinery type stuff, so we're going to be using the drill press, the 2x72, the angle grinder. In the next episode, we're going to be using files and really getting the scales defined even more. But you already kind of know what this thing looks like because you saw the thumbnail. So we're going to get it to that point in this episode. Let's go ahead, let's jump into it. Let's get this thing knocked out. So what we did here was we scribed a center line down the spine. Now we only need the scribe to be centered down to about right here because that's where this line comes up to. That is where that first scale is going to dive into the blade. You'll see that as we start going through this process. But all I did was I took a big marker, marked that spine, took my little center scribe tool, scribed all the way down it. Now what we need to do is scribe perpendicular to that, so across the spine where we actually marked our lines for our scales. And all we're going to do is just come through here and scribe across. And these are roughly about an inch apart as you go back. They're all based on this peak right here. So where this kind of comes up to this little harpoon style tip, this peak right here, because there's going to be the highest point there. So the highest one of the scales is going to actually come back to this, and then this one's going to dive into it, dive down, dive down. What we're going to end up doing now is we're going to grind in with the 2x72 into this little triangle right here, here, there, 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 and there. And what I mean by that is we're going to grind in a little wedge out of here on every single one of these, and that's going to give us a point that goes up into that line. And then we're going to end up taking that further down as we go, but we need to start off by creating this wedge looking thing going down the spine. You're going to see that as we grind it through on the 2x72. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just grind in at an angle and just go to the center line on each one of these and then flip it over and do the same thing. The only difference is on these main ones coming through here, we're just going to be pretty vertical with this. But when we get up to this front one, we're going to have to go at a pretty steep angle like this just because of the angle of this right here. So that scale is going to dive down into this, so it's really going to hook down. These are pretty much just going to hook down a little bit, 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 but this one's going to be pretty drastic going into this. And if we ground that real vertical, what would happen is this would grind down into here as opposed to just into here. So now that we have that out of the way, all those wedges ground into there, we need to go ahead and have these scales dive into the one in front of them. So we're going to come in and we're going to grind right behind where we did our little wedges, where they end or where the points are. We're going to grind those down, and then we're going to rock it over and finish refining those. Now, of course, this is all the work we're doing on the 2x72 before we do some of it with an angle grinder, and then we get into doing the file work and stuff like that. Well, I know that this part of the video can get pretty boring and a little monotonous because I'm showing y'all a lot of similar steps when it comes to the work that I'm doing on the 2x72 with creating these little profiles on the spine. But I figured I would go ahead and show it all to you just in case there was something that stood out or something that maybe seemed simple to me but was something that you wanted to see. So I went ahead and left all that in the actual video. Now, I did time lapse it to make it a little bit more digestible, but hopefully y'all are okay with the amount of footage when it comes to everything that I did on the 2x72. Now, if I felt like something else needed to be taken out and any of the other steps, I went ahead and took that out, but For this, I think this is the perfect amount. You let me know in the comment section if it's a little bit too much, and maybe I can work on that moving forward. So now what we're going to end up doing is, for one, cutting the gap in here that's going to turn this into kind of a guard, and then where the blade starts. So we're going to cut a little gap here, and then we're going to come in at an angle. See how this is already round here? So if we came in right here and ground in, it would make a radius here. So we're going to use this and we're going to grind it back a little bit and create this kind of hook that we're getting in with this before we do anything else. We don't want to go past this line, because what's going to end up happening is I'm going to come in at a later step and I'm going to grind in almost a fuller with a wider disc. So now you can see it work its way into that kind of dragon scale profile. Now, of course, they're going to get changed quite a bit from this to the end result, because we got to do a lot of work into these little areas here so that it dives in the whole entire way. But we got to go through this step first before we get any further. Well, there you go. Both sides pre-ground. So a lot of people might be sitting there going, okay, if you were able to do so much work with the 2x72 and the angle grinder, why do you need to do all the file work? Why did it take you almost 35 hours to file it last time? Well, for one, it was my first time doing one of these, so it took a little bit extra time. But whenever it comes to doing the file work, I can only get so fine-tuned with those other tools because you can't really see either side as I'm doing it. So with the angle grinder, if I'm grinding on this side, I can't see this side to make sure I'm getting it really uniform. I'm just roughly getting it to where I need it to be, and then we use the file to do the rest of it. Plus, I need to come across here and make sure that where this scale comes up, comes across, and goes over is really even as you go across. Make sure everything is centered, so where these points come into the next scale, that they're centered, because this becomes such a huge focal point that if this is off by any way, people are going to really see it, pay attention to it, and focus on it. So you need to do a lot of this stuff by hand, and it just takes time. It might not take me as long this time now that I know what I'm doing, but it still takes a lot of time. We have to come in here and we have to flatten all of these pieces right here where these scales dive into the other one. We got to flatten those, and then we got to come in and file the scales and start radiusing them and really flattening them, because that angle grinder doesn't make a bunch of smooth passes on there. But we got to go with something that's going to cut it pretty easily file wise. So a little bit heavier file. And then we got to come in with lighter files and smooth it up some more. Then we got to come in, we got to hand sand, we got to do all that stuff so that everything looks even. But I wanted to give you an idea of some of the filing that goes into this before we end this particular episode. And there's a lot of this right here. So we're just fine-tuning and cleaning everything up and getting a lot of uniformity. And of course, that is just working on the spine of it. I'm going to pull this off and I'm going to bring it up, and we'll actually talk about the work that I have to do to the side here. So guys, whenever I'm talking about the rest of the file work on here, there's little areas up in here that need to get filed in. So you can see where the scales dive into each other right here. So you can see this little flat area all the way across there. We need that flat area to go all the way down to the fuller, so that that full scale dives into the next one, not just the top. Now, we do that with a lot of different little smaller files and things like that. We can use the bigger ones to really profile and radius the top. And another thing I'm probably going to do is drop these sections where they dive into the scale in front of it. I'm probably going to drop those down a little bit more, because I like how aggressive this one looks going into there. So I'm probably going to dive those down a little bit more. And then next week's episode, we're going to really work on filing these areas. I'm going to have that as its own episode, because that's where a lot of the file work comes into play. This episode was showing you, of course, the hole getting drilled for the creation of the guard. Now the bevels are going to start right about here. There's going to be a plunge line here that goes into the bevels. And there's going to be file work around the hole. But you're going to see all the file work in one video for the scales, but this gives you an idea of how everything's already looking and what tools I use to start them out. So of course, drill, being able to come across with the 2x72, the angle grinder to initiate those scales, and then in next week's episode, focusing on the filing, maybe go ahead and do the little fuller that's going to be this line that's right here. And then the episode after that, probably doing the bevels. Just work on our way through this project. Hopefully y'all think that this is turning out pretty cool. If y'all have any constructive criticisms, leave them in the comment section down below. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Guys, that's the end of this video. Y'all have an amazing day. Y'all stay safe out there, and I will catch y'all next time.